breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
A warm and friendly hello. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you. As in segment number 2, we are going to be joined by Josh Inglis. He does amazing work over at Covers, taking a look at a wide variety of things. I guess you could say he covers a little bit of everything for Covers. He covers the NFL, MLB, along with some NHL as well, so he does a great job on that front. Does a good job of taking a look at player props, and we're going to be just lending some thoughts on how to handicap playoff baseball, how things can be very wonky with managerial decisions, with players getting a quicker hook in terms of the pitchers in general, how matchups become more and more important, and then we're going to be diving into both of the games that we are going to be seeing for Wednesday as well, especially this Phillies versus the Atlanta Braves game. As I do this right now, there's currently no numbers up in terms of Dodgers versus Padres because I have to have this up by midnight Pacific time, and just with the game timing in general, I don't have any current lines for that, but I'm going to give you guys my handicap of that game in the final segment, along with my thoughts on the Braves versus Phillies game 2, and a little something I like to call touch them all, so I'm going to get picks and analysis there. And if you ever do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter timeline at @GUnit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. No questions today, but this is a podcast that is brought to you by Vote Yes on Prop 27 along DraftKings. Californians currently, they are unable to bet online, which is the opposite of more than half of the country. Those of you guys out there in the great states like Pennsylvania, New York, where I'm at, Nevada, list goes on and on, you're able to. And unfortunately, Californians, they're stuck with shady bookies, and well, they're just stuck out in the cold in general, so Prop 27 is going to help with that. So vote yes on that, and vote yes to taking a look at an amazing day of baseball on Tuesday. Let's take a look back at it. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Now, unfortunately, I am going to have to do this before we know what happened in terms of the Dodgers versus Padres game because the Greg Peterson experience, it is now Sunday through Thursday if you're out on the West Coast. On the East Coast, it is midnight to 3, Monday through Friday, but we do know the first few results that happened as the Philadelphia Phillies, they get done against the Atlanta Braves by a count of 7-6. As for the Philadelphia Phillies, the offense completely erupted, and now 2 out of their 3 games this postseason have went over the total. No home runs for the Phillies, but they go 5-12 with men in scoring position as Max Fried, he goes 3 1/3 innings, gives up 6 runs, 4 of which were earned. The unearned runs were due to his own throwing error, so that wasn't too great. Bullpen from there did their part. Jackson Stevens, 2 scoreless innings. Colin McHugh, Dylan Lee, they combined for 2 1/3 innings. Scoreless Jesse Chavez, he gives up a run in 1 1/3 innings, and you very nearly had Zach Eflin be just so Eflin awful that he blew this game. He gave up a home run to Matt Olson in the 9th inning, and that made what was a 7-3 game a 7-6 game, but he was able to do just enough to get those final outs as he gives up 3 runs in his inning of work. Ranger Suarez, he got pulled very early as he went 3 1/3 innings, but had his pitch count at 86, gave up 5 walks, and all that he gave up was really a solo home run. That home run to Travis d'Arnaud. From there, the Phillies bullpen, other than Eflin, didn't do a bad job. Connor Brogdon does give up 2 runs in a third of an inning, but Andrew Bellotti and Brad Hand, they both get a pair of outs out of the bullpen. Scoreless, Sir Anthony Dominguez has not been himself since coming off the injured list. 2 scoreless, and then Jose Alvarado able to deliver a scoreless inning. If you, like me, and the Seattle Mariners, thoughts and prayers to you on this one. 8-7 the final. Ironically enough, the interview that I do with Josh, we were doing it live during the Astros versus Seattle Mariners game. We were thinking that the Mariners were going to be able to get to the window, so we're going to get a little bit of commentary there as Robbie Ray gives up the walk-off home run. Mind-numbingly bad decision to trot out there a starter who had gotten blown up on Saturday on 2 days rest in the 9th inning when you got a top-5 bullpen in terms of ERA. I go down the list of what the Seattle Mariners did wrong in that sequence, and it's all falling on Scott Service. I honestly really don't play Robbie Ray. It's hard to be a starter and then be ready 2 days later to face a guy, but that said, for the Houston Astros, they did provide a trio of home runs as Alex Bregman goes deep off of Andres Munoz. Logan Gilbert, the starter, gives one up to Yoli Gurriel, and then Alvarez, the walk-off home run off of Robbie Ray, as Robbie Ray gives up that home run, and two of the men that he inherited, they were via Paul Sewald, so they combined to give up 3 runs in that inning. Andres Munoz gives up that home run. He gives up 2 runs in an inning. Logan Gilbert, he was able to offer a little bit of length. 5 1/3 innings, giving up 3 runs, which makes the decision to go to Robbie Ray just all the more mind-numbing. Matt Brash, pair of outs out of the bullpen, and Diego Castillo, a scoreless inning. And for Seattle, they did a very good job of getting Justin Verlander as J.P. Crawford took him deep. For Verlander, he gave up 4 runs in the first 2 innings. He gives up 6 in total over the course of 4, but the Astros made the number 1 bullpen in terms of ERA in the big leagues this season, and they were able to have that fire on all cylinders. Christian Javier does give up a solo home run in 1 1/3 innings as he was taken deep in this one by Eugenio Suarez, but you got 5 outs out of the bullpen, scoreless out of Brian Abreu. Hunter Brown, a scoreless inning, and then Rafael Montero, he gets a win. I am doing this as the Guardians versus Yankees game is currently going to the bottom of the 8th inning with the Yankees up 4-1. Unless if we get a comeback from the Guardians, that'll make favorites 6-6 straight up this postseason. For both starting pitchers, I felt like they did a solid job. For Garrett Cole, all he gave up was a solo home run over the course of 6 1/3 innings, with Stephen Kwan going deep for home run number 1 this campaign. Jonathan Loaizaga got a pair of outs out of the bullpen, and then Wandy Peralta was able to polish off that 8th inning for Cleveland. Cal Quantrill gives up 4 runs, 3 of which were earned. He did give up a pair of home runs and very nearly gave up a third, but unfortunately Josh Donaldson, he got thrown out on a long single essentially, which caused for a lot of laughter as Harrison Bader and Anthony Rizzo took him deep, and from there we've seen Trevor Stephen and Yo de los Santos be able to crank out a yard shot, and for the LA Dodgers, they've already got a home run up on the board. They're currently up 2-0 on Mike Clevenger and company. This game very, very early on, so I'll have a little bit more on VSiN tonight, 9 o'clock p.m. Pacific to midnight, and if you're out there on the East Coast, midnight to 3, and we'll have a little bit more there, but we have been seeing relatively a good split of overs and unders. We don't have the final 2 games in the books yet. Right now, it looks like that Yankees-Guardians game is going to be going under, but I am not going to call that done because, well, that would be a little bit foolish to do. But as of right now, we've got 6 overs and 5 unders in the bag when it comes to the MLB postseason, so we shall see if that rages on, and we've got to talk a little bit about just playoff betting strategy in general, things that you want to be taking into account when you take a look at these postseason games, and a little bit of look at both of the NLDS games for Wednesday with our good friend Josh Inglis of Covers. That is coming up next right here on the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this guest as he does amazing work over there at Covers. That would be Josh Inglis. He is north of the border doing an amazing job, taking a look at a little bit of everything, as I know that he is a very busy man, as the NHL technical start to the season was a few days ago, but things really cranked up on Tuesday. The North American start to the season was on Tuesday for the NHL. I know he does a great job on that front. Josh, I know, does a good job taking a look at some NFL action as well. All throughout the year, it's done an amazing job being able to gauge everything that we're getting in baseball as well. So, man, that does a great job scouring so many markets, and you're able to follow Josh on Twitter at @covers_Josh all together. And Josh, it is always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
What's up, Greg? It's kind of a sad day as everyone's listening to this Wednesday, as we won't have those great schedules that we had, the 1 o'clock game, the 3 o'clock, the 5 o'clock, the 7 o'clock game. Those will be done, as it looks like Wednesday jumps to the NL Divisional Series goes Wednesday, and then the American League will go Thursday.
It is going to be a lot of fun to take a look at these, and it is a little bit strange now that we're going to have no more than 4 games on any given day, and to your point, on Wednesday, only 2 games with the NLDS games going down, and then the ALDS games. Those are going to be on Thursday, so a little bit of a strange staggered schedule. But
so we'll get 4 games on Thursday then, and then 2 games on Friday, I'm guessing?
We're actually only going to be getting 2 games on Friday, and then if needed, we're going to be getting 4 games on Saturday, which I do think is very strange because I do think that that's a travel day for the ALDS because they do the 2 and 2. So that is a bit awkward to say the least. And I do think that there are positives and negatives to that because no doubt you're able to zone in a lot more on these games, but at the same time, when it comes to this time of year, there really shouldn't be a whole heck of a lot of new handicapping to do. There are so many data points with all these teams having played over 162 games this season. It's not like you're going to have some out-of-nowhere minor leaguer get called up. We're not going to have like any sort of a roster adjustment, really, aside from something that we saw on Tuesday with Craig Kimbrell getting left off of the Dodgers roster, which I'm not sure about you, but I thought that was actually positive for them. But I do think that when it comes to this time with the MLB season, there really shouldn't be quantum moves made. You want to take into account a little bit of momentum, but I don't think that this is a time that if you see a team lose a game 1 or a game 2, that all of a sudden you should be just completely doing a 180 on the way that you've handicapped these teams and pitchers all throughout the year.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing in these series, just in sports in general, even international competitions and round robin stuff. People's ability just to throw away the more handicapping they did leading up to the first game after one game result is a very common thing in handicapping and something people should try to avoid and do. Look at game 2 subjectively as you did game 1, and that should really help you with your handicapping. And as you were saying, not a lot to really look into. And for example, I believe in game 1, the Padres-Dodgers game, Josh Bell's not in the lineup. I think that's just versus a lefty and Julio Urias. But those are about as big as things as you're going to see. Chris Taylor not in the lineup on Tuesday night. So maybe you might swing those guys at maybe 5 points at the most. Josh Bell might be worth 2-3 points. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you do want to be adjusting your handicap a little bit based on the matchup, based on who is all going to be in/out of the lineup. But there is a reason why you do have a lot of righty-lefty splits as well, because some guys, they just have more success against other pitchers as well. So it does make a lot of sense there. And when it comes down to a lot of these games as well, something that is going to be very, very difficult to quantify is something that we saw on Tuesday. Starters not being able to go deep into games, as we saw in the first 2 games. You really didn't get anyone other than Logan Gilbert that was able to complete more than full innings. I think that is something to be very mindful of when you are handicapping some of these games, because you're talking about Josh Bell not starting for the San Diego Padres. Well, if they are able to get to Julio Urias, because we're doing this before that Dodgers versus Padres game goes final, perhaps he pinch hits in like the 5th, 6th inning when there's a little bit of a pitching change there. And I think that that's very important as well, because a lot of these starters, they're going to have a very quick hook if they get into a little bit of danger. Just see what happened in that Braves versus Phillies game.
And then I'm looking here at the Dodgers bullpen, only seeing one lefty in the entire pen in Alex Vesia. So, I mean, there are some really good middle relievers coming out of Dave Roberts' bullpen. Yency Almonte, 1.02 ERA, and we know what Blake Treinen and Dustin May can do. And we also know what Dave Roberts does. So quick pull, probably a big thing. The books opened Julio Urias at 17 and a half total outs, and now it's down to 16 and a half, and that's where it should be. And I think the markets are obviously getting really efficient, especially in outs. So it's tough for bettors to find any value there. And like you said, only Logan Gilbert probably going deep. One of the more surprising numbers, and the market had it bang on pretty much, was Robbie Ray in Game 2 versus the Blue Jays. They had that outline at 14 and a half, which is insane to think about. The reigning AL Cy Young winner can't go 15 outs, but that's just the nature of the beast. And he got the quick pull, and they won the game. So it's even more justified with managers. 2 walks, losing location, losing fittings, ball starting to fall arm side, and you're done.
Yeah, and I honestly can't say that it was necessarily the world's quickest hook on Robbie Ray either. He was just getting completely lit up in that game. And, well, the Seattle Mariners won that game, but at the same time, I don't think that it was much help due to our good friend, Mr. Robbie Ray, on that one. That was the team coming back and being able to get to that bullpen, as well as Josh Inglis does amazing work over at Covers is joining me on the podcast. And you bring up something interesting, because I do think that is a little bit of an added element when it comes to postseason, these quick hooks that we see, because I know that you do an amazing job of taking a look at the player prop market, and I would have a lot of trepidation taking anyone's strikeout prop over, because you could have a guy that's doing a relatively solid job, but I think more than handicapping the actual starting pitcher itself, you have to handicap how the manager is going to maneuver with that pitcher. Like someone like a Dusty Hooker, for example, I think that you could feel a little bit better about him rather than some of these other guys. I know that while he was with the Washington Nationals, he went to his bullpen a little bit too much, but with the Houston Astros, it feels like he lets his guys go a little bit longer just because he does have some good starters in general. Meanwhile, you take a look on the flip side, if the Rays were still in, this would be a prime example of just a team that you would never, ever want to take a strikeout prop over with in regards to any of their starting pitchers either. And I do think that that is something that is very important to gauge because managers, they do utilize their starters very differently. And when they see a hint of danger, your managers are going to play that very differently because there are some that are going to have the quick hook, and then there are others that are going to trust their guys.
We have guys like Garrett Cole sitting at 6.5. It's paying plus 120 to the over ahead of Tuesday's game. Strikeout prop is usually at 7.5 at opening, closes at 8.5 and leans to the under. And now it's a full strikeout down and about 50 points leaning to the under. So massive changes to regular season numbers here. Garrett Cole 6.5, 17.5 outs. So there is a weird correlation there. So you're seeing Garrett Cole over 17.5 outs, 6.5 strikeouts. I think that a lot of that pricing has to do with obviously the Guardians who strike out at the least amount in all of baseball. But they're a very interesting thing right now, the pitcher prop markets, and something that if you've been paying attention to all year, you'll notice these weird nuances and you'll be able to find, I think, a little bit of value if you can find pitchers who do have, like I said, high out totals and high strikeout totals.
And I think that that is very interesting that you bring up that number from Tuesday as well, because with Garrett Cole, his strikeout prop being at 6.5, the Cleveland Guardians as a team this year have been averaging right around 6.7, 6.8 strikeouts per game. So that is something.
But it's all, they've been priced in. That's the thing about these pitchers. Starting pitchers versus the Guardians all year have been basically a full strikeout under their league or their season average for the total. And so everything's priced in. It's not something like you're going out to bet, under strikeouts versus the Guardians because they don't strike out a lot. No, that's already baked into the price. And you might even have more value betting the over just because of how much it is baked into the price.
And I think that that is so interesting because you're able to weigh that one of two ways. The Guardians don't strike out a lot, but Garrett Cole, he led the American League in strikeouts as well, but then you have to base in their length as well. How much is Aaron Boone going to be willing to go to the bullpen in games as well? So, there's a lot of things to just take a look at in general when it comes to postseason baseball. As Josh Inglis is joining me on the podcast, does great work over at Covers, and I do think that that's some of the beauties and frustrations in terms of being able to handicap a lot of these games this time of year, because we saw the Mariners get the job done against the Astros. Phillies were able to get it done against the Atlanta Braves in games where the guys that you were taking a look at in terms of first five, in both games, you didn't have both pitchers complete 5 innings. Verlander goes 4 innings. You did have Logan Gilbert complete the 5, but in that game between the Phillies and the Braves, both guys went 3 1/3 innings, and I do think that that lends a little bit more value in this time of year to taking a look at bullpens and taking a look at their usage in general as well, because I think that now here in October, it's more important than ever before, because even if you take a first 5, you're not guaranteed by any stretch of the imagination that the guy that you're banking on as a starter is going to be able to complete those 5 innings.
And those middle roles are so important. Like, think back, like maybe 8-10 years when Andrew Miller was at his prime. Getting to Andrew Miller, like that was part of the game, like just getting to Andrew Miller. And then it was like, okay, he's going to go 6 outs and we're not going to do anything. Once you get these middle relievers who become a massive part of the bridge game, it's just such a chess game now. And I think it leads to value with guys, managers like Dave Roberts, who have obviously done this quite a bit. And we saw guys like John Schneider shoot themselves in the foot because of it. Trusting middle relievers becomes tenfold more important than it obviously does in the middle in the regular season. But that's enough on the handicap. But let's get right to game 2 here, Wheeler versus Wright. What do you think about the 60-point difference between game 1 and game 2? Because Wheeler's plus 105 in the Phillies, and you thought it was a series price. It's insane how much that movement is.
Absolutely, and the Atlanta Braves, I'm not even kidding here, they are 17-1 in Kyle Wright's last 18 starts, and now you're able to get them at a minus 130. Now, I recognize that if you take a look at the fielding independent numbers of Kyle Wright, it probably doesn't point to him being quite this good, and when a guy goes on a run like this, even if it's like Bob Gibson 2.0, I mean, it's a little bit inflated. He's been having a little bit of a charmed run, but that said, you do take a look at the way that Zach Wheeler pitches on the road rather than at home. That is a big consideration as well. And I mean, even if you give Zach Wheeler a little bit of a pitching advantage in terms of the starting pitching, the bullpen advantage is just completely in favor of the Atlanta Braves, and the lineup factor, that's in favor of the Atlanta Braves as well. I think that this is a really good bounce back spot for the Braves. I feel like you're in agreement with me on this one, but it's just a little bit befuddling that we're seeing a minus 125 on this, because this would indicate that if these two teams were playing on a neutral field, Zach Wheeler might be a very, very, very slight favorite.
We've had this conversation before. 25 points, 30 points, right in that wheelhouse of home field, side to side. And with Wright, you're getting a guy with some postseason experience. It's not like it's his first rodeo. Led baseball in wins this year, I think. Did pitch 180 pitches, which is kind of worrying. Had some arm fatigue issues late in the season. I'm guaranteeing you these aren't the things that are priced into that number going into this. So if you want Atlanta at minus 125 in a matchup that, like you said, I don't think there's a disadvantage in starting pitching. The advantage is with Atlanta in the bullpen. There's an argument to be made about both sides offensively, but I think ultimately, especially with last at bat, that the advantage is with Atlanta. And you're telling me if this game, like you said, was on a neutral field, would be pretty close to a pick'em. Yeah, I'll take the 25-point tax, basically, for what it's going to cost me to play Atlanta here.
Kyle Wright has made 20 starts for the Atlanta Braves since the beginning of the month of June. They've lost 2 of them. They've lost 2. I mean, it's just
those
absolutely
are Cal Quantrill
ridiculous
numbers.
And both of those starts came on the road. They have not lost a Kyle Wright home start since, ironically enough, against the Philadelphia Phillies in very, very late May. But he has already faced off against the Phillies twice since that time span, has been able to get the job done in both of those starts as well. So I do take a look at this, and I do think that there's a nice advantage there. And then the other game that is going to be going down for Wednesday, we're doing this without numbers, but that'd be the Padres against the LA Dodgers. I'm going to be very curious to see what we get for an opener, because most books are not going to be posting up an opening number on this one until we see game 1 go final, which that'll be probably right around like 10 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. Very, very early a.m. for those out east. But I do think that Clayton Kershaw, there's a fear that he's going to get a little bit overpriced for the Dodgers, because I do take a look at Kershaw, and with guys like him, you typically do pay for that name brand. I felt like it was that way for Garrett Cole on Tuesday. And if you're able to get like a plus 150 or greater with the San Diego Padres, with the way that Yu Darvish has been rolling, I think that that's going to be some pretty solid value.
Absolutely. We're talking about Darvish is a very complexing pitcher. When his stuff is on, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. He comes in with experience in the postseason. He does have a 4.50 ERA, but a lot of that was versus Houston in the World Series, where he could have been tipping, they could have been cheating, could have been some certain situations. So you're still talking about a sub-4 ERA career postseason guy. He was plus 150 versus Scherzer in the opening round. So I would assume that the price is somewhere around this. That's where I'd base it on, about plus 150. And then, like you said, you're probably going to get some Kershaw and Dodger tax on that, so it could be at like plus 165, which would make it an almost have to play on San Diego, don't you think?
Yep, absolutely. I set this more around the neighborhood, about plus 148-ish personally. If I'm able to get plus 148 or greater with the Padres, I'm going to be firing in. And then I do think that just because you do have 2 relatively explosive offenses, if we do see a total, much like we were seeing yesterday, of a 7, and I wouldn't be surprised if perhaps we get a 6.5 in this spot as well. That would be a good play on the over as well as the game.
Robbie Ray just blew it. Robbie Ray just blew it in the bottom of the 9th. He just gave up a walk-off home run to Yordan Alvarez.
Yep, that is relatively brutal for the Seattle Mariners. And I do think that is something that it's really hard to quantify, starters coming out of the bullpen, because we've seen it time and time again. It's a reason why the Dodgers, in my opinion, did not win the World Series last year. Julio Urias came out of the bullpen for the LA Dodgers in that game 2 against the Atlanta Braves. And when you do have guys that are trying to take on different roles, I think that that's something that you need to handicap in. And I oftentimes downgrade a lot of these guys that are starters, that they get converted to the bullpen. I don't know if you feel the same way, but these starting pitchers are absolute creatures of habit. When you have them come out of the bullpen, it is not easy to do. And honestly, as much as I have faded Patrick Corbin this year, he deserves all the credit in the world for what he did in 2019 because very, very few guys are able to do what Corbin was able to do.
But there's your point of having to handicap in the uncertainties of inexperienced coaching. And when you bring in Robbie Ray with 26 outs in the game, if my math is correct, just to face a lefty in probably the hardest hitting left-handed bat in baseball, and Yordan Alvarez. I don't get it. So you take out Paul Sewell and you bring in Ray. They just think too much. I think it's just a matter of fact in a 162-game season, they kind of just roll with the punches. They don't really have to do as much. And then all of a sudden in the postseason, they have to create all this strategy, and I need to make a move now. No, I can't wait. I need to do something now. And it's just a classic case of overcoaching. So always put poor, inexperienced managing styles into your handicapping. And gosh darn it, to use nice language on the podcast, but that is an awful beat. That is just an awful beat.
Yep, you're talking to someone that had the Seattle Mariners money line, so yeah, that is not so great. We will have a little bit of a brighter note here because while that is an awful beat and that is something that you don't love to see, I love seeing your work, as I know you do amazing work over there at Covers, Josh. You do a little bit of everything, NFL, NHL, MLB, list goes on and on. You go through the bad beats, you go through the tremendous wins. You always are able to do a good job of finding value and staying even keel. So let the good people at home know they're able to follow you on social media and everything that you've got going on in general.
Find me on Twitter. All my work's at covers.com. You can find it there. I pretty much publish everything on my Twitter page right now. Doing Bat X release stuff with Derek Carty for the MLB preseason. Doing his Blitz projection stuff for the NFL season for primetime games. And then jumping on with Carlo Koliakovo and doing NHL stuff for the upcoming NHL season. So we're all over the map, but we're up to like 9 recorded shows a week for like the next month. So busy, but it is baseball season. That's where my heart lies, and Robbie Ray just took my heart and threw it over left field wall or wherever Yordan Alvarez did it at Minute Maid Park. So I appreciate it, Robbie.
Yep, the both of us. And Robbie Ray just started on Saturday. I mean, if you even really wanted to convert the guy into the bullpen, the guy just started on Saturday.
And he didn't even pitch well.
I know. I mean, gosh. You've got a dominant bullpen in the Seattle Mariners. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, so don't forget to put that into your handicapping. Thank God for Terry Francona. You don't have to worry about that man. That man is a gem, and I'm looking forward to winning some Guardians money down the stretch here.
I am as well. Unfortunately, I'm going to wrap up this podcast interview before I have this podcast get flagged for explicit content and swearing because, boy, that is not necessarily too terrific. But what is terrific is always being able to get our good friend Josh Inglis of Covers on this podcast. Does amazing work, handicapping a little bit of everything. Big thanks to him for joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VC Family Podcast. Coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis for both games on the MLB board for this MLB Wednesday as we touch them all.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. Always great to get Josh Inglis aboard. He does amazing work over at Covers, taking a look at the great game of baseball along with the NFL. Hockey season has started, so he is a very, very busy man. Unfortunately, we both got burnt by Robbie Ray, which that's a mind-numbingly bad decision. So we got a little bit of a bone to pick with Mr. Scott Service. But with that said, I never have a bone to pick with Josh because he does amazing work taking a look at so many different markets. Big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this MLB Wednesday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter feed at Junit_81. Only 2 games today, so that's a tad bit of a bummer. And right now, with regards to Dodgers versus Padres, no numbers currently available on that game just because I have to record this a little bit earlier. I have to have this podcast up by midnight Pacific time, so that leads to a little bit of an issue there. So there might be a little bit of an adjustment as to my handicap on it, but I do have this game all handicapped, so I'll give you guys what you got there. And then when you wake up and you're able to find numbers, you're able to fire in on those. So let's start with the first game of 9:31, 9:32 on the betting board, and this will be the DK Nation pick. The Philadelphia Phillies, they are on the road. They're facing off against the Atlanta Braves. Kyle Wright hopes to be Mr. Wright for the Bravos, and Zach Whelan and Dylan Wheeler is on the bump for the Phillies. And the Phillies, they're between plus 105 and plus 115. Minus 125 pretty much across the board is your number on Atlanta. 7 is the total. The over is anywhere between minus 120 and minus 125. The under is between even and plus 105. And when it comes to the spot, I set the Phillies plus 144. So I was willing to go up to a minus 144 with the Braves. And the Braves money line is the DK Nation pick. The Atlanta Braves are 18-2 in 20 starts by Kyle Wright since the beginning of the month of June. It's absolutely incredible how good he has been this season for Kyle Wright. He's done a nice job of just being able to keep the walks out of things in general. Last season, he was giving up 5.5 walks per 9 innings. This year, that falls more around about 2.6, 2.7. So did a good job keeping the ball in the yard, giving up less than a home run per 9 innings. Has been better at home than he has been on the road as well. 13 of his league-leading 21 wins did come at home, 2.86 ERA. His strikeouts per 9 rate at home is right around 9. He's been able to keep the ball in the yard when he's been at home, 0.8 home runs per 9 innings, so has been successful there. And in 3 starts against the Philadelphia Phillies, he's had some success, giving up 6 runs across 19 innings in those 3 starts, so he's been able to do a good job there with the Phillies, hitting $123 off of them. I do think that there's going to be a little bit of regression there, probably going to be a little bit of regression to the fact that Phillies hit 3 home runs off of them as well. And for Zach Wheeler, he's been able to do a solid job against Atlanta thus far this season as well. A 2.70 ERA across 3 starts, 6 runs allowed in 20 innings. So both of these guys similar numbers against the former team. But that said, with Zach Wheeler, 3.84 road ERA compared to a .185 home ERA, so that is a little bit of an issue. He's been giving up about a home run per 9 innings when he has been on the road. I do think that both of these starting pitchers are relatively even up. Both of these teams, they certainly had to rifle through their bullpens yesterday, and let's call it what it is. The Atlanta Braves, they've got a significantly better bullpen than the Philadelphia Phillies. As for Atlanta, even though they did have to use up a few guys like Dylan Lee and Colin McHugh that I like, they still have Rossio Iglesias, who has posted up a sub-0.75 ERA since coming over to Atlanta. Jesse Chavez, a little bit of a nice long guy. They had to use him up yesterday, but AJ Minter is going to be available for this team. They are going to be without Tyler Madzik in this series, it does appear, as he's been dealing with a little bit of ailment in general throughout the season, but I do think that you're going to be able to get some pretty solid length as well from our good friend Kyle Wright. If you do have one trepidation, it is Kenley Jansen coming into this game, but also for the Philadelphia Phillies, they had to use up quite a few of their more notable bullpen pieces like Sir Anthony Dominguez, Brad Hand. They had to come in, and this is a Philadelphia Phillies bullpen that, since the All-Star break, worse in the National League in terms of ERA. You saw Jose Alvarado in that series against St. Louis give up a bomb. That's not necessarily too terrific. And both of these teams, they do have very prolific offenses, as Kyle Schwarber was second in the league in terms of home runs. Doesn't necessarily move the line a lot, but he's been able to supply 45 plus home runs overall for the season. Rhys Hoskins, he's got 30 plus home runs. He was able to get a hit yesterday. Bryce Harper looks to be finally back. Going into the playoffs over the last 35 or so days since he had come off the injury list, he was hitting about at 200, 3 for 3 yesterday. That's what you like to see. Nick Castellanos has done a solid job as well. Alec Boehm, Gene Segura, both of these guys hanging north of a 275 along JT Realmuto, and Realmuto has been legitimately the best hitting catcher in the big league since the beginning of the month of July. But then you've got the Atlanta Braves, who they've got so many guys hitting right in that neighborhood, about a 265 to 280. William Contreras, Travis d'Arnaud, Austin Riley, Dansby Swanson, Ronald Acuna Jr., with Riley being able to hit 37 plus home runs during the regular season. Dansby Swanson, he was able to go deep about 25 times. Matt Olson didn't necessarily do the world's greatest job of moving the line during the regular season, but he's really been able to get hot. He gets a home run yesterday, and if you date it back to the regular season and games that he actually played in, 7 home runs in his last 10 games, so he has been able to do a nice job there. When you need Vaughn Grisham and Michael Harris II for at-bats. Both of these guys hit right around a 300 during the regular season as well, so I do think that you've got a clear advantage when it comes to the lineup with the Atlanta Braves. I think that the bullpen is a big advantage for the Braves. I think that Kyle Wright going to be Mr. Right, and I do think that both of these offenses, they're going to be able to generate runs, especially with the bullpen use that we saw. I said my total at 7.7, so I'm going to be taking a look at the over, even if we go up to a 7.5, but DK Nation write-up, it is going to be on the Atlanta Braves. I think that they bounce back in this ordeal, and then we wrap things up with 9:33 and 9:34 on the betting board. The LA Dodgers, they are going to be playing against the Slam Diego Padres, as Yu Darvish is going to be going for the Pods, and Clayton Kershaw is going to be on the bump for the Dodgers. The Dodgers I set as a minus 148 favorite. This is subject to a little bit of change based on what we see in Game 1, but I do think that we're probably going to see north of a plus 150 on the Padres, and that would put me on them. And then my total is set at a 7.3, 7 or less. Going to be taking a look at the over 7.5 or higher to the under. LA is still a little bit more of a pitcher-friendly ballpark, but we all know that the Dodgers, they are going to be able to bang and they are going to be able to mash. Mookie Betts has been amazing all season long. 35 home runs, hitting at 270. He does such a good job of setting the table. And then Max Muncy, Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, all between 21 and 24 home runs this season. Now for Max Muncy, it has been rough for him to say the least in terms of just being able to get on base, being able to move the line in general, but last 30 games of the regular season, he was hitting more like a 250. You got Justin Turner and Gavin Lux are both able to hit at 275. Freddie Freeman, I mentioned before, he's hitting at 325. You just have weapons upon weapons when it comes to this LA Dodgers team, but also keep in mind with the San Diego Padres. At home, they're averaging fewer than 3.9 runs per contest. On the road, 5 runs per game. A lot of the offensive, shall we say, woes of the Padres have just been because they play in Petco Park. Just that simple. Manny Machado has been terrific for this bunch, hitting 32 home runs, hitting nearly a 300. Juan Soto during the postseason has finally been able to bust out. He had that big RBI hit against the New York Mets late in that game. Brandon Drury hasn't necessarily been himself since the trade deadline, same for Josh Bell, but Josh Bell, he actually got benched for Game 1 of the NLDS as well, playing the matchups, and he had a home run in that series against the New York Metropolitans. Ha-Seong Kim, Jake Cronenworth, Rickson Profar, they're all in between about a 240 to 251 as well with the Padres. Your biggest trepidations with this team involve the bullpen, as Robert Suarez has been able to provide a sub-3 ERA. You've also had Tim Hill be able to give you a 3 ERA, but Josh Hader has been able to lock it down recently in his last 11 total appearances. No earned runs allowed to give up an earned run against the LA Dodgers. That was completely not his fault. And for the Dodgers, the good news is you don't have Craig Kimbrell in the bullpen. I literally have to upgrade the Dodgers a little bit because you don't have that albatross out there, as you've now got instead Alex Vesia, throw in there Yancy Almonte, Evan Phillips. Caleb Ferguson is not going to be on the roster, but all those guys providing a sub-3 ERA. Chris Martin, ever since he has come over for the Dodgers, he's been able to give this team about a 2 ERA. They now have Blake Trine back in the fold as well. Brusardo Graterol is off the injured list as well. So weapons upon weapons when it comes to this team. But for Clayton Kershaw, we have seen him act up during the postseason and not necessarily be himself. And for Clayton Kershaw, I fear that you're going to be paying a little bit of a tax on him as well, because with Clayton Kershaw, he has, over the last few seasons, been giving up the deep ball just a tad. This season, it was significantly better, right around 0.7 home runs per 9 innings, so he was able to do a rock-solid job there. And I will say, since the All-Star break, he has been in relatively good form, posting up nearly a 2 ERA. Opponents have been having a tough time hitting him in general. The swing and miss stuff, it's down a little bit from Clayton Kershaw. Normal numbers right around 9.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. Still solid, but you take a look at the way that Yu Darvish has been able to perform recently. He has been absolutely money on the road. And this is big because during the regular season, his home ERA was right around a 250, more like a 360 on the road. But you do take a look at Yu Darvish. The last time he allowed more than 3 runs in a road start, you have to go all the way back to before the 4th of July, ironically enough, against the LA Dodgers. But this guy has been absolutely spectacular, including his road start against the New York Mets that we saw in the postseason. This guy has now allowed a grand total of 3 earned runs in his last 5 road starts. He really has been able to figure it out. For Yu Darvish, right around 9 strikeouts per 9 innings. He has done a good job with regards to pinpoint command, as he's given up only about 1.7 to 1.8 walks per 9 innings. I think that Darvish is going to be able to keep this team very live. I think that you get both pitchers being able to do a solid job, but I do think that both offenses are able to scrape across a total of 7 over. If we get to a 7.5, I'm going to be taking a look at the under. As I said, my total is 7.3, and plus 148 or greater is going to put me on the San Diego Padres, and that will wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Josh Inglis of Covers for joining me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, the Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever you hear podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you've got a question, comment, segment idea, want to have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter timeline at GNet_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way, that is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I'll be coming at you guys every single day throughout the baseball season. That means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.